You were talking about how we're moving into tort litigation?
Yeah, so possibly, yeah. So I think the criminal barrier is high, right? It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And the California statute says, hey, you have to knowingly give it to somebody. That's going to be difficult to get over, right? And even your um, negligence in criminal, negligent homicide, those types of statutes, very difficult because you don't know that you're doing it, right? Because this thing is not fully done. You're not guaranteed you're going to have it. You don't know whether you have it. So I think it's going to be hard to get to the criminal side. The civil side may still be there. The money, one person has to pay another person money based on their activity, right? And we have tort law, which is what happens when you have a car accident, right? So if you're driving your car and you run into somebody, you generally owe people around you a duty of care. And that duty of care is usually what a reasonable, prudent person would do. So there is an open question of, what is reasonable in this situation, right? Would a reasonable person go and get into, go to this mass gathering and potentially get COVID-19 and then pass it along? I think that's an open question, right? Because I think we see both sides of it, right? We have a lot of people that are staying home and are following the orders. And then, even in California, but largely nationally, you got a lot of people who say, I want to go out. I want to go, I'm going to go, go to this gathering. I'm going to go to the beach, right? So the courts would generally look at a reasonable person's standard. And usually you'd have a jury would decide what a reasonable person would do. So imagine getting, a group of people together on a jury and them having to debate what would a reasonable person do, right? And who knows, right? I mean, because we see people acting both ways. So I could see, a jury cutting either way on what a reasonable person would do in this situation. The vast majority of people in California, it seems like, are staying home, but there also seems to be this significant minority that are out, engaging in this behavior.
Well, that brings me into the other question.
Yep.
So, because there's many layers, and I really appreciate you taking a cautious approach to theorizing. The fact is they're not going to admit it, but everyone's guessing the highest levels of government. They are making policies up here and there. They're doing their best. I'm not criticizing them at all, but
yeah.
We are in a new theoretical legal policy jurisdictional area, and not criticizing any of the experts, but I'm just saying now's a good time for all of us to be thinking aloud. How do we adapt?
It's a good time for conversation, and it's gotten as these orders came in, a lot of people said, okay, the orders are coming in, it's for safety. We're all going to follow it. What a lot of people have started to talk about nationally, and I've heard this, is now, who drew the lines in these orders, right? Like, it's safe to go to the supermarket and walk around near other people. It's safe to get exercise on the sidewalk, but somehow it's unsafe to walk on the beach, right? And that's where a lot of people are starting to question it, right? Like, who drew the lines and why, right? They're allowing a lot of similar behavior, but different contexts. I get the grocery store, right? People need to eat, right? So I think that's one of the reasons they exempted the grocery store.
Sure.
But then they exempt exercise if you're on the sidewalk, but if you're exercising on the beach, it's not exempt, right? So a lot of people are starting to question that. But to drive, and one question, I haven't heard any cases in California, but in other states, like the drive-in churches have been questioned, right? So you can drive in your car to go to the grocery store, but you can't drive and sit in your car to listen to a religious service, right? So a lot of people have started to question where the lines are. And I think that reflects a couple of things. These orders were rushed in place. They weren't really thought through. It was an unprecedented situation. But it has left open the question. And a lot of people, rather than going back and trying to talk to their governor or talking to their state legislature and saying, hey, we should redraw the lines, they're jumping into a protest. And that's part of that's part of the problem, but that's part of how America is, right? People, rather than sometimes when they don't feel like they're heard by the government, they do a protest.
Fair enough. Okay, well, let me throw some scenarios.
Sure.
And I'll put a little theoretical box, and I'll put conditions in there, and you tell me what maybe could work with that. So Theoretical scenario. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is not. I'm going to try to make it very plausible.
Okay.
I live in LA. I don't, but in this scenario, I live in LA. I believe science. I believe doctors. They are saying this is very deadly. People could get hurt. I have a grandmother. She's 70. Now, she's old, but the women in my family live to be 130 or whatever, so she could keep going.
Yep.
I somehow am in an apartment complex and we're in a small place and we're right next to each other and everybody has like a common hallway to the common bathroom or something, and that's just the way that worked out. Person X, my roommate, who I just have to live with because the landlord picked it, goes to that rally. He watches TV. He hates Newsom. He doesn't like what he's saying. Hell no, I want my rights. He goes there. He comes back. Grandma and I have been sheltering for months. She was fine. Suddenly, days after he returns, she starts coughing and she dies a week later.
Yeah.
Do I get to do anything, or am I supposed to just go, well, life? And because I got to tell you, I'd be pretty mad.
Right. Well, got a couple issues, right? So, one big issue in all of this, and this comes up in a lot of cases, is causation, right? And this happens in a lot of times with, cancer diagnosis, right? So, sometimes people will get a cancer diagnosis and they want to sue somebody that manufactured a product. And the real issue you get at is causation, right? Can you prove that it was caused, right? Because our legal system doesn't want to hold people liable for things they didn't do. So your first big hurdle in this situation is going to be causation, right? Did that person going to the beach cause grandma to get sick and die?
Right.
Well, it could have been touching something going down the hallway when she had to go to the bathroom, or it could have been a lot of things. Could have been somebody else. It could have been the air system at the apartment building, right? So your first big hurdle is going to be proving the causation. Assuming you can get over the causation hurdle, then we have to look at, what's our standard for liability, right? Is it negligence? I mean, it certainly doesn't appear to be intentional. This person didn't intend to kill grandma, right? It sounds like they wanted to go to the rally. So we've taken kind of all the intentional killing stuff off the table, right? So now we're into the kind of unintentional. Is it maybe manslaughter, right? You did something that was dangerous and you caused the death of another person. Maybe. I mean, kind of you look at the manslaughter requirement, which is, you did something negligent that was, beyond reasonable care and you killed somebody. Maybe it's manslaughter. But the hard part, of course, with COVID-19 is the percentages. Not everybody has it. You don't know that you have it. You don't know who has it. So that becomes a real question. The other part, of course, and it becomes this whole constitutional question with the fundamental right, right? You have the right under U.S. Constitution to assemble. And so, can you hold somebody liable for an indirect consequence of them exercising their constitutional right? Maybe, maybe not, that's kind of an open question because those rights are so fundamental that the courts have long held that you get to do them, and the government has a hard time restricting people. I mean, there are restrictions. There's a case out there from the 90s where a group in Oregon, they wanted to smoke peyote at their religious festivals, and basically the guy, down the line wants to get unemployment benefits, but he's been smoking peyote at his religious gatherings and says, hey, you can't hold that against me as part of my religion. And the Supreme Court said, basically, look, we want people to be able to free exercise religion, but you can't stuff everything you want to do under your religion and say, I get to do it. And so if you're going to be smoking drugs as part of your religion, you don't get to then